Welcome to another episode of the No Ceilings podcast. I'm Tyler Metcalf, riding solo this week until later in the show, where I have James Edwards III from The Athletic coming on to help me break down Ausar Thompson. But as many of you may have seen on Twitter, my co-host, our good friend Tyler Rucker, just had a baby girl last week, so he is on dad duty right now, taking some well-deserved time off, spending it with the family. Everyone is happy, healthy, doing great. So he just needs some rest and to go be a dad. So we're giving him at least this week off. He might be back next week if he's getting the itch to get back into it. But some much deserved time off for Rucker. So today it's just gonna be me. Those of you hanging out, watching live on YouTube, feel free to drop questions, and I'll try to get to them at the end, assuming we'll have time. But today I'm going to kind of just focus on the idea of battling production, mainly with older prospects, versus potential with one and done prospects. And this idea that we always get so excited and enticed about what could be, and that illusion of the ideal characteristics and outcome that we build up for prospects, especially those that we have an affinity for, and how that can really skew our judgment a lot of the time. And it's tough. It's tough. I'm guilty of it. Everyone who does any sort of evaluation is guilty of it, but it's something that we kind of have to constantly combat. And, this was the focus of my piece that I wrote today over at NoCeilingsNBA.com. First plug in at 2-minute mark. Oh my goodness, I'm killing it on my own. Who needs Rucker? So go check that out if you haven't, 100% free. But in recent years, we've seen this. We've seen older prospects come in and make an immediate impact, to the point where it's like we're doing. Some people are doing redrafts and they're taking them top 5 already, and it's been 30 games of their career. So we're seeing guys like Jaime Jaquez, Christian Brown, Jalen Brunson come in and be ready made, and they end up falling later in the draft because they're older. And just because they're 22, 23 years old, they're viewed as reaching their potential and reaching their ceiling as a player already. In some cases, that's really true. But in others, when guys are producing at a really high level at big time programs and contributing to winning year over year over year, it's something that can't be ignored just because the shiny new thing could potentially maybe grow into a Jaime Jaquez. Well, why bother trying to nurture and develop a player to become Jaime Jaquez when you can just take him in the first round or the lottery or the top 10 already? And in this year's draft, there are so many question marks and red flags and concerns with a lot of these freshmen. I think we're going to be really surprised when some of these upperclassmen go top 20, top 15, top 10. Top 5 might be a little rich right now, but I think some of these guys are going to go a lot earlier than people expect. And that's because recent drafts have shown us that these guys are talented. They're mature. They've grown up in the system where basketball is their life, and they're ready to make an impact right away. And just because they're a little older, just because they're a little closer to their ceiling, doesn't mean they've peaked already. There's plenty of room to grow. There's plenty of experience of these guys making an impact as bit role players, when they were underclassmen, and growing into surefire big time leaders and the guy on a team. So just starting off with the kind of production bucket of this, and some of the upperclassmen who I really think are going to shock a lot of people where they go and have a really good opportunity of being some of those rare day one producers in the NBA. During this, I'm going to try and incorporate some film breakdown as well. So keep an eye out for that, or head over to the YouTube page at No Ceilings NBA if you want to check that out as well. But I will promise to do my best to describe what is going on in these clips as well. When we talk about production, the first one I got to talk about, guy I've been trying to get to go pro for a couple years now. He's been one of the very best defenders in college basketball for the last handful of years, pretty much since he was a freshman or sophomore at Texas Tech. Kevin McCullar. The big question with McCullar his entire career has been the outside jumper. He's been a good passer. He's been a good rebounder. He's been a good cutter. He's been an awesome defender, especially a team defender, with how quick his hands are and his ability to make rotations and time those to perfection. But he's never been able to shoot. And it's not just that he's been a mediocre shooter. It's been a bad shooter. That's until this year. And up until this point, or so far this year, McCullough is shooting 40.8% from three on 4.1 attempts per game. That's solid numbers. That's solid volume, really good results. Coming into this year, if you would have told me he would have been around the 35 to 38 mark, I would have been really excited about that. That would have shown me, okay, maybe this is the year where he finally sneaks into the back end of the first round. Now he's doing that. Now he's, 40 plus on solid volume as one of the only kind of floor spacers on that Kansas team. He might go top 20. He might sneak into the lottery if he maintains this for the rest of the year. Additionally, he ranks in the 96th percentile in spot up scoring with 1.4 points per possession, 73rd percentile on all jumpers with 1.07 points per possession. 87th percentile shooting off the catch with 1.33 points per possession, and he's shooting 44.2% from three off the catch. Additionally, 84th percentile on cuts, and he has an assist rate of 24%. These are all really good indicators of him being a high level connective wing at the next level. He's doing it now. He's done it his entire career. Now you just kind of plug and play him as the seventh man in a rotation on a playoff team or a middling team with playoff aspirations. He's a guy who can be an outlet as a catch and shoot guy. He can pick up the primary defender. He can be a reliable off-ball defender, and he can be that connective passer who keeps the ball moving, swings it from one guy to the next, and keeps the offense flowing. Kevin McCullough has been awesome this year. He was really good last year. He was really good the year before that. But this year, he has been the driving force behind that Kansas team, and he has been absolutely incredible. Don't be surprised when you start seeing him thrown in the top 20. And don't be surprised on draft night if he goes in top 20. So when we talk about the shooting improvements, here he wasn't doing this stuff last year. So as he kind of relocates, goes down to the block, he's just going to run off this pin down from Hunter Dickinson. And as he runs off that screen, he sees that his defender's going over the top of it. So instead of bolting back out to the wing, he sinks back into the corner to give himself that extra space and that extra time while his defender chases back over. By doing that, he kind of minimizes the movement in which he's shooting. He's able to control his momentum a little more. He's obviously able to create a bigger gap between him and the defender. And his mechanics are still a little funky. They're a little slow. They're not the prettiest thing in the world, but they're consistent and they're effective. And what he just did there on that screen, or running off that screen, was it was or he kind of morphed an off screen catch and shoot three into more of a spot up look where he's able to control his momentum, get his feet under him, get set, and really keep his mechanics consistent. But when I talk about him being one of the best defenders that we've seen, it's mostly the weak side stuff and his ability to rotate and be that kind of low man, either defensive playmaker, jumping passing lanes, protecting the rim. Here, we're going to see him in the low corner, and he just reads that pass to perfection. He leaves his man. As Indiana kind of runs this pick and roll, they deny the screen. Hunter Dickinson is now forced to slide over to protect the rim to, take away a layup. And McCullough's left as the lone weak side defender over there in the left corner with two guys. And he knows that pocket pass is immediately coming because he's already in the passing lane. And he's kind of sneaking behind the post player here. So he's just able to time this to perfection, use his quick hands, and poke the ball away and spark transition going the opposite direction. This time, we see him kind of protecting the rim. This is really impressive rotation. Again, Hunter Dickinson is forced to kind of step up at defending the pick and roll. And McCullough has to rotate, or DHO, excuse me, but Dickinson is playing at the level and is giving up a role here. KJ Adams tries to sink down, but Khalil Ware is a shooting threat, so he has to step back up. That leads McCullough to having to rotate and blocks the power forward at the rim. It's a really impressive use of his hands, rotation, timing, awareness, all of it. And then finally, the on-ball defensive stuff with him is, I think, a little worse. I don't think he quite has the foot speed, but he's able to really use his IQ and his length and his hands to perfection. Here we see he gives up the baseline drive to a really crafty scorer here, but he stays attached. He doesn't panic. He stays involved in the play and gets the ball handler to a spot where he can still contain him and really affect the shot. As the layup goes up, he swats it away. It's really, really impressive stuff that he's been doing for years now. Another guy that I wrote about in the piece that I think deserves a lot of praise and a lot of attention, Tristan da Silva. He hasn't necessarily been my cup of tea, but some people have been very high on him for a long time, for a handful of years now, and I'm starting to get it. I'm late to the party. I admit it. I'm late to the party, but the power forward from Colorado has just consistently produced at an extraordinarily efficient level. Some of the stuff that he's doing and the consistency in which he's doing it over the past 3 years, it's rare. And the fact that he's doing it at his size, and it's not stuff that's going to be all-star kind of stuff, but it's stuff where it's like, oh, we can throw you in basically any rotation that we can think of, and you're going to elevate it. You're going to be able to hold your own defensively, both on and off ball. You can be that outlet for kickouts and shooting off the catch. You can, abuse mismatches in the post. I think Tristan da Silva is a guy that a lot of people really need to start considering as a first rounder. And a lot of people at No Ceilings will disagree with me on that. But the more I watch, the more numbers I look at, the more trends that I see going back, just looking at Bartovik's database, he fits the mold of a guy that's going to be in the NBA for quite some time. So just looking at da Silva, I go into a little more detail with all his current numbers and whatnot in the piece. But since 2008, da Silva would be one of 27 players from a true high major conference to have an effective field goal rate over 60, a block rate over 2, a steal rate over 2, a 3-point percentage over 35, and a box plus minus over 7. The reasons that I chose those figures to first initially look at are because they, first the block and steal, those tend to translate pretty consistently to the NBA. They show his defensive capability, his versatility, the effective field goal. Okay, yeah, you're an efficient scorer, you're an efficient play finisher, 3-point percentage, high 3-point percentage plus a high effective field goal rate. Really promising signs for scoring efficiency and versatility going forward. And then box plus minus, are you contributing to winning? So of those 27 players, I'm just going to read through a handful of names here. So we have Keegan Murray, Mikal Bridges, Tyrese Halliburton, PJ Hall from this year, another guy who should have made this list, but has some very big fans at No Ceilings. Lonzo Ball, Chris Duarte, Dean Wade, Victor Oladipo, Mario Chalmers, Reed Shepard from this year. We'll get to him in a minute. Jake LaRavia, Demore Hodge, Tyrese Halliburton again. Turns out he's kind of good. Killian Tilly, Tristan da Silva from this year. Mikal Bridges again. Mo Wagner, Montrezl Harrell, Jackson Robinson from BYU this year. Keisha Johnson from Arizona this year. Caden Shedrick from Texas this year. There are a lot of players on that list who, varying star or levels of stardom and ability and contract and role and everything in the NBA. But those are all guys who made the NBA. Those are guys who are in a rotation. Those are guys who are contributing to winning in some form or fashion. So does Tristan da Silva have the most explosive and electric and sexy game? Not necessarily. But does he do the little things that the stars don't necessarily want to do, that the stars don't consistently do, that the stars need their role players and their coworkers to do to lead to winning? I think so. And I think he's a guy that needs a lot more credit going forward. Another name, Zach Edey. Not going to go into too much detail on him. Just any query you run on Bartovic, he's probably going to pop up unless you include 3-point stuff. But rebounding, shot blocking, scoring efficiency, free throw rate, all of it. It's absolutely absurd. He's going to be a first rounder. He may not be a starter. Some people think that he's verging on that. I think he's going to be a hell of a backup center for a decade plus. I think he moves as about as well as you can expect from someone that's that size. I think his footwork and the drop coverage is really sound. Would like to see him pass a little more, but he's the end all be all of that Purdue team. So him not being a high level playmaker, it makes sense because everything goes through him. Um, but they do have some shooters on there. So if he kind of boosted those assist numbers, I wouldn't complain. But he's going to be a guy that goes in the first round. And, shout out Sam Vicini. He tweeted out, why is Donovan Clingan so much farther ahead than Zach Edey on boards? I'm not entirely sure. I think it's a really smart question because there's starting to be some injury concerns with Clingan. There's starting to be some, how how effective is he in major minutes? Can he play for extended minutes without fouling? The more I've seen of Clingan this year, the less I've liked. And the inverse has been true with Edey. So Klingen's a sexy name because he's the younger prospect. He was new on the scene last year. His defensive numbers last year and this year were, absolutely incredible. I still think Klingen's going to be a really good player. So please don't take that the wrong way. But Edey's not that far off. Edey should be closer in that conversation than he's currently getting credit for. Maxwell Bombach did an incredible write-up on Edey the other day over at NoCeilingsNBA.com. That piece is 100% free. Go check it out. Go read it. Maxwell did awesome work on it. The final guy in the upperclassman production bucket that I kind of want to cover that, again, I think is going to go a lot earlier than most people think. Someone I have in the top 20 right now, point guard from Marquette, Tyler Kolek. Corey Tulaba did a great write-up on him the other day. Also, go check that out, NoCeilingsNBA.com. Sorry for all the plugs, but they're really good pieces. So go get smarter. Go read about these guys. So Kolek, white point guard from Marquette, not your typical top 20 pick, but this dude just knows how to play. The game is so easy for him. It's so slow. He's a solid defender. He gets to a spot wherever he wants. Really good shooter, really good passer, really good at rim finisher. Everything with him is below the rim, but he is so efficient shooting at the rim. So just running through some of his kind of percentile rankings currently. So he's in the 84th percentile overall in points per possession, 69th percentile in pick and roll scoring, 78th percentile in spotting up, 88th percentile with pick and roll, including his passes, 93rd percentile on all jumpers, 89th percentile shooting off the catch, 92nd percentile shooting off the dribble, and 79th percentile shooting at the rim. He's a purely below the rim finisher, and he ranks in the 79th percentile shooting at the rim, and he's shooting 66.7% at the rim, despite not being an above the rim finisher. It's extraordinary touch, and I know what you're thinking. You're like, oh, it's probably low volume. He's just had a handful of shots there. 49.6% of his shots come at the rim. He gets to the rim whenever he wants. He's really good with angles, change of pace, really strong at fending off shot blockers, really good with either hand. It's not a fluke that he's scoring and finishing in all three areas of the floor the way he is. Additionally, he's one of three players to have an effective field goal rate over 60%, so efficient score, assist rate over 35, steal rate over 3, 3-point percentage over 40, and 3-point attempts per 100 possessions over 6. So efficient scorer all around, efficient shooter on good volume, defensive playmaker, and really involved in the playmaking of the team and the overall offensive operation. The other names on that were Tyrese Halliburton's sophomore season and Paul Stoll from the 2008 UT Rio Grande Valley team. Never heard of him. If you did, shout out Paul Stoll. But that's just really impressive. That's a rare class, incredible numbers that he's putting up. Even when I lowered the assist rate, my first hesitation with that query was, okay, that's a really high assist rate, 35%. Okay, that's a lot. I lowered it to 30, names didn't change. I lowered it to 25. There were a couple names from lower schools that popped up, but list didn't go over like 5 or 6 names. So I tried to manipulate it to include more people, and I couldn't really. When I lowered the 3-point attempts to 5, didn't change. So Tyler Kolek, really good. He's really good. Don't let the visual of this kind of non-explosive 6'3", 6'4" white point guard fool you. The kid can flat out play. But let's kind of take a look at some of his place here and run through some of the film. So we're going to start off with the playmaking, just interior passing. So just a little pick and roll here, spins off it. I'm just going to start that over. So comes up, runs the side pick and roll with Oso. Kolek denies the screen, spins, drives baseline here. Does a great job of keeping his dribble alive and sees his teammate cutting from the weak side corner here. That's a really tough pass to thread the needle between two defenders, bounce pass against your momentum, set up your teammate perfectly for a layup. Really high level understanding of spacing, of angles, and how to set his teammate up where he needs to. This time, just really high level drive and kick. Not a lot of guys make that pass. It helps that Kolek is a lefty. So, he comes off the screen, gets wide open lane that really forces the aggressive rotation from the weak side. But as all three defenders kind of converge on him, he, without hesitation, he makes that live dribble pass through traffic to the opposite corner, right in the shooter's pocket. He doesn't have to change his base at all. He's able to just catch, rise up wide open, doesn't hit it, but the whole process leading up to that was absolutely perfect, and Kolek couldn't have done much more there. The playmaking with him is that kind of stuff. It's not overtly flashy. It's not shocking. It's just consistent. It's the right decision. It's really high level decision making. But what really, really, really stands out, as I kind of mentioned before, is the at rim finishing stuff. So, he does just such a great job of absorbing contact, a little shot fake, gets Dylan Mitchell off his feet. Dylan Mitchell's a hell of a defender, deserves a little more draft buzz than he's been getting, but gets him off his feet. And then as Kolek drives, he has Mitchell on his hip, and to ensure that Mitchell doesn't get back rim side and can't really affect the shot, he does a great job of veering into his path and creating that contact and then finishing with the left-hand extension finish. This is really high-level craft that translates to the NBA. It's stuff that we see from Jalen Brunson and Podziemski, where they really know how to manipulate their body, how to leverage their strength, how to get to their spots, and finish with those extensions at the rim with soft touch to avoid getting blocked by more athletic rim protectors and defenders. Let's see. Let's move on to the next one. Little more pick and roll creation from him here. So gets the handoff, reuses the screen, gets downhill, keeps the dribble alive, and finishes with the offhand. Again, not shocking. It's not stuff that is going to litter highlight tapes, but it's an understanding of where his defender's going and how to manipulate that momentum. He gets downhill, little hesitation, gets the rim protector in the air. He keeps his dribble alive, sneaks over to the other side of the rim, finishes with his right hand. That's a pro level move. And then again, just kind of snakes through the lane out of the pick and roll, slips it. Defender steps up. He adjusts, finishes with the right hand. He's always calm. He's always composed, really under control, rarely ever rushed. But then it's not just the pick and roll stuff. It's the way that he moves even when he doesn't have the ball. So here he just lifts out of the corner, gets the pass, and he's going to just kind of drive baseline, make that skip pass. But I love how he just immediately relocates to that corner that his teammate vacates. And he could easily let this fly. Wide open corner three for a good shooter. Ideal shot. Instead, pump fake. Defender goes by. Now he has a free rim to drive to. Gets an even easier shot. It's impossible to rush him. It's impossible to kind of get him off platform and make him do stuff that he doesn't want to do because he's so composed. I'm sorry for gushing so much over these guys, but yes, they're a little older. They're a little more, we've seen them for years. They're a little closer to what they're going to end up being than some of these freshmen who are new to us. And, just imagine if some of these guys could turn into Tyler Kolek. Oh my God, how exciting would that be? But why waste the opportunity of potentially getting that when you can just take Tyler Kolek? It's not that hard sometimes. And I think a really important thing that we have to remember with a lot of these freshmen is and these NBA teams is that the NBA teams don't go out of their way to invest a ton of resources and a ton of time into these guys. If they're not showing that they can at least hold their own on the court in their first year or two, NBA teams are largely done with these guys. They don't get the opportunities where, in the evaluation process where we talk about, oh, well, if you give them a couple years and you really put them in the right developmental system and you get him in the strength and conditioning and he learns how to play in the G League for a couple years. And then by year 4, he can really, really start coming into his own as a role player. That never happens. These NBA teams are impatient. Jobs are on the line. There's no room for error with these guys. And if you're not showing that you can at least hold your own or that you're really making strides behind the scenes, these NBA teams are going to move off of guys. So when we think of the idea and the, what these guys could be, that's important. And it's a big part of draft evaluation because that's what the whole point of the draft is to not necessarily get a guy who's going to be an all-star on day one, but who you can build your franchise around. The problem is when we don't accept the new data that comes in, that we don't accept the new sample that comes in, and we just keep pumping the idea of and holding to these preconceived notions of, well, coming into the season, he was a top high school recruit, and I thought he was going to be this guy. It's like, okay, well, over the last 30 games at a really high level college program, he hasn't been that guy, and that's okay. That's okay. What that tells us is that we have to abandon the idea of who we thought that guy was going to be coming into the season and reshape our expectations of him and who he could be. That doesn't mean that he's a bum and that his basketball career is over. It just means that it might not be a this year guy. And the stigma around returning to school for another year, it's absurd. So many guys get better. We've seen it year over year over year that returning to school and not jumping to the NBA when you're not ready, it pays dividends because some of these guys just get bad advice and they read rankings and they read evaluations that pump them up. And these evaluations only talk about their 99th percentile outcome of what these guys could be, but they always ignore the 5th percentile outcome and how big that gap is. And with so many of these freshmen this year, that gap is wider than it has ever been. And to continuously pump these guys up as, potential lottery guys when they're just not right now is a disservice to them, to their teams, to their families, and to our scouting credibility. So here are a couple guys where I think we just kind of need to abandon the idea of what we hoped they would be this year. And unfortunately, I got to start with Justin Edwards. This hurts as someone who had him as his number one prospect coming into the year. I thought Justin Edwards was going to be awesome. I thought he looked really impressive in Portland, but it just hasn't clicked with him this year at Kentucky. The shot isn't there. The scoring versatility isn't there. The overall involvement isn't there. He just isn't playing with the confidence that I saw from him in Portland, and in high school. He's a really talented kid. He's a really talented player, and I think he's going to get there one day, but I don't think he's a one and done at this point. So besides just looking at the tape and, what he's done, I wanted to kind of compare what his numbers are right now to where to what other drafts have happened or what has happened in other drafts. So Justin Edwards currently has a usage rate under 20, an assist rate under 8, shooting less than 30% from 3, and has a free throw rate under 25. 0 freshmen have been drafted in the first round with those numbers. I don't think Justin Edwards is necessarily going to be the first one to do that. Not a single freshman with those numbers it's glaring. But, coming into the season, one of the hopes with Edwards and one of the kind of strengths that we considered in his game was the outside shot. And I still think he's going to be a good shooter in time, but it's not there yet. With that said, let's say Edwards has an awesome close to the season. Second half of the season, he heats up, outside shot starts falling. Hopefully it will. I really hope so. But if that 3-point percentage gets over 30, than that same list that we ran. So usage rate is still under 20, assist rate is still under 8, free throw rate is still under 25, but the 3-point percentage gets to over 30%. That list then includes the freshman years of Franz Wagner, Josh Primo, TJ Warren, Corey Kispert, AJ Griffin, Christian Brown, and Omari Spellman. Good list. Some really good players on there. The only issue is that AJ Griffin was the only one and done wing. Franz Wagner returned. TJ Warren returned. Corey Kispert was a multi-year guy. Christian Brown was a multi-year guy. So even if Edwards' 3-point percentage gets over that 30% hurdle, which, hopefully it does, it's still not a guarantee that he's going out this year or that he should go out this year. And that if he does return for another year and kind of builds on how he closes out the season, hopefully on a strong note, there are some really promising signs of players who have had really good careers that he could kind of grow into. But let's say the shooting doesn't improve and that he remains under that 30%, but using that original query, but we just kind of remove the free throw rate, we get another list of 11 names of freshmen. And when we exclude the guards and bigs, so usage rate under 20, assist rate under 8, and less than 30% from 3, the wings that are included in that list are Keegan Murray, Mikal Bridges, Dylan Windler, and Kobe Brown. 4 more guys who are multi-year guys. Going back to school isn't a bad thing. And unless Justin Edwards really starts to turn it around this year, I think things are trending more towards him coming back for his sophomore year, and that's fine. Abandoning the idea of these guys in year one is not giving up on them and giving up on their basketball career. It's just saying you're not ready yet. You're not ready yet. There's stuff here that we can build on. And as these, different lists show, there's a lot to build on. And when things start kind of clicking and you improve your body, you get a little more confidence, the game slows down a little bit, you improve your footwork, your agility, your flexibility, all those little things that go into the end product. Coming back as a sophomore, tearing the roof off the building, and actually announcing yourself as the lottery guy is way more valuable than forcing yourself into an NBA draft when you're not ready and you go in the second round and the NBA just kind of moves off you real quick because they don't have a lot of time for second round picks who aren't ready. They're not going to invest their time and resources into developing those guys. It sucks. It's just the reality of the business. Another guy who we unfortunately kind of have to abandon the idea of right now is Garway Dual, and that hurts. I love Dual's game. Incredible defender, incredible playmaker. Love how shifty he is with his on-ball creation. He can't score at all. There's zero scoring instincts. There's zero scoring efficiencies right now, and it sucks because I think there's stuff with the shot that's workable. I think there was stuff with his high school film around the rim that was really impressive and can translate in time. But again, he's just not ready. His defense is NBA ready. His playmaking is NBA ready. His on-ball creation is NBA ready. It's just the scoring. And the NBA continuously tells us what they value. And guards who flat out cannot score or shoot is not something they value right now. So for him to return for another year, I think would do absolute wonders for not just his draft stock, but his overall effectiveness as a player. Again, going back to Bartorvik, what a sight. Only 11 players have been drafted in the first round after having an effective field goal percentage under 45, and only 2 of those have been one and dones, Marquise Teague and Zaire Williams. Dual, maybe a team gets convinced by Dual's defense and playmaking alone, and he becomes the third one and done to kind of make that list. But there are the percentages across the board from 2-point range to 3-point. They're all under 40. Some of them are under 30, and it's just not ideal right now. So it sucks, but he just might not be a this year guy, and that's okay. I'm sorry to keep going back and stressing the importance of returning is okay, but it is, I promise. Another guy who the last guy I promise I'll, stop being so negative here in a second. But the last guy who I think is unfortunately trending in this direction, I'm not ready to full on say that we need to abandon the idea of him yet. But he's trending in that direction, unfortunately, is Stefan Castle. He's been shockingly polarizing this year, where some people have just been horribly offended that we had him as an early pick in our last mock draft, while others have been horribly offended that he wasn't higher. You people need to make up your mind. I like Castle. He's intriguing. And the reason I'm willing to give him a little longer leash and a little bit more time on this is because, first off, he had that injury that he was kind of slow to come back from and deal with at the beginning of the season. And now Donovan Clingan is out again. So I kind of want to see if he really steps up and takes on a bigger role for this team, because he's been kind of in the shadows and behind the scenes for a lot of it. Or at least while Klingon was hurt. So I want to give him a couple weeks, see how he adjusts to that. If he really steps up, takes on a bigger role, he's insanely talented. But this dude is terrified of scoring. He just refuses to take outside shots. He's 1 of 8 from 3 this year. I would like to see, him let it fly a little more. So, I'm just going to pull up a little clip here, but this is brutal process here. So, UConn gets the ball in the paint. Cam Spencer makes a really good pass out to Castle. This should be an open 3. You got to let that fly, especially with Ryan Nemhard closing out on you. He's small. He's not really going to affect, I think Castle's listed as 6'6". He shouldn't really affect your jumper when he's this far away. Instead, a little shot fake, drives into traffic, gets hung up by Nemhard, and gives the weak side defender enough time to rotate over, use his athleticism, and block a really heavily contested layup. You got to shoot that. And if you're going to be a top 5 guy in a draft, you have to at least shoot it. I don't care. I honestly don't care if it didn't go in. But just having that willingness to let it fly and to shoot it and to force the defense to respect you from out there is absolutely crucial. So, in theme with tonight, let's go back to Bart and look at some more lists. So Bartorovic has him classified as a wing/guard. Of that position type, there have been only 6 freshmen to have been drafted in the first round with a 3-point percentage under 30%. Romeo Langford, Anthony Edwards, Isaac Okoro, Archie Goodwin, Troy Brown, and Keon Johnson. Not a bad list. But Castle would have the lowest 3-point frequency by far among them. I think the closest one was Archie Goodwin at like 3.6 3-point attempts per 100 possessions. And I think Castle is currently at 3.5. So not great. The others all had much higher, almost double in some cases. But, one of the other reasons I'm willing to give Castle a little more time is that he's doing more stuff other than scoring. So it's not like he's just out there contributing nothing. He's doing a bunch of little things that role players are asked to and have to do. And that's really encouraging from a top recruit at a big time program with national championship aspirations and expectations. So, and Castle currently has a box plus minus of 5. Really strong, especially for a freshman. 10.8 offensive rebounding rate, a 23.5 assist rate, a 3.0 block rate, and a 3.1 steal rate. His defense has been so much better than I ever expected it would be. As a freshman, he's doing the little things. His passing has been impressive. He's crashing the boards. He's contributing to winning. The thing is just he's not scoring. And if you're going to be a top 5 pick, you have to show some competency in scoring. And he's currently in the 1st percentile on jumpers, 51st percentile at the rim, which is encouraging. Would like that to be a little higher given his size, but he's not super explosive. So not totally shocking. 14th percentile spotting up, 87th percentile in transition. But the only play types that he qualifies for based on volume with synergy is spotting up and transition. He hasn't done much else. He hasn't had the opportunity to, and he hasn't sought those opportunities out. So coming into the year, I was really excited to see what the Klingon Castle pick and roll would look like with Caravan, Newton, Cam Spencer spacing the floor. And we haven't seen that at all. It would be nice, even with clinging out, to see a little more of that going forward. But he needs to start showing a little more alpha. And God, that sounded so lame. Oh, I hated myself the second I said it. But he needs to kind of start forcing things a little more. I'm not totally convinced that he will, because he's pretty low on the totem pole of usage and opportunity there. Maybe with clinging out, that starts to change. All right. So, two guys who are kind of blending the idea of production and potential, Reed Shepherd and Jacoby Walter. So, just run through a whole bunch of numbers with Reed Shepherd here. They are lunacy. Also, if you missed it, go check out Corey and Albert's breakdown of Reed Shepherd and Rob Dillingham from Thursday. Awesome podcast. Make sure to go check it out. But Reed currently has an effective field goal rate of 74.4, defensive rebounding rate of 17.7, assist rate of 24.6, a 3.6 block rate, a 5.7 steal rate, a 59.5% from two, 57.8% from three. He ranks in the 98th percentile overall in points per possession, 100th percentile spotting up, 100th percentile in pick and roll, 79th percentile in transition, 99th on all jumpers, 99th shooting off the catch, and 93rd shooting off the dribble, and the 78th at the rim. Those are absurd. They're going to come down. They have to. And if they don't, then that'd be fun. If they don't, we're talking about a top 3 pick here. But it is incredible the way that he is performing right now. And it feels real. I know the I know the numbers are going to come down, but I'm not worried about it when he hits that inevitable cold stretch, because the process of what he does is so consistent and it is so reliable, that he's able to do it game over game, possession by possession. And there's no issue. There's nothing looks forced. Nothing is like, oh my God, he's just on a hot streak right now. It'll come back to earth. It's replicable stuff that he does night in and night out. And there aren't many players, especially freshmen, who do stuff like he is doing. So yeah, you can kind of gripe about the size. He's not the biggest guy. He's not the most explosive guy, but he's really strong. He's got a really good first step, and he reads the game incredibly well. So his feet, his processing, his brain, all of it just screams top 10 guy at this point. And when you have that production to match, it's absurd. I didn't bother running any queries for him because he's the only one that pops up in any of them. The numbers are just too outlandish right now to really legitimately compare against anyone else. It'll be fascinating to see what they look like come February, come March. But it's absurd. And when I talk about the processing stuff, let's look at some of his defense here. So just weak side, this is absurd ground coverage. So Aaron, let me just restart that. So Reed's going to follow his man to the opposite corner here, from the left corner to the right corner. And North Carolina is going to run this high pick and roll with Armando Bacot, or it's more of a Spain action, excuse me, with Armando Bacot rolling to the rim. And there's confusion here among the Kentucky defenders, except for Shepherd, who's reading it and tagging down onto the opposite block, tagging Bacot, while Shepherd's man lifts out to the opposite wing. From here, the second that RJ Davis pivots back, Shepherd is already breaking on this pass. He knows it's coming because Cadeau is the only open person on the court, and Davis has picked up his dribble, so he is bolting to cover there. Incredible ground coverage, really quick recognition, and he gets a dunk in transition. Just really high level defensive awareness and processing speed that we really, really rarely see from freshmen, and just really accurate hands and timing on that as well. Let's go to another off-ball steal here. So Shepherd is kind of down playing as the low man here, and Penn runs this little empty corner DHO. Shepherd again times his rotation to perfection. Quick hands, pokes the ball loose as the big man goes up for it. Ball scrambles. Shepherd again sneaks his way in there, pokes it loose yet again, and Kentucky's again running in transition. What I love here in transition, he doesn't force it. He's never rushed. He picks up his dribble. They have a 4-on-2 opportunity. So instead of just barreling to the rim and hoping for the best, he takes the space that the defense gives him, pauses, and lets things settle and lets the opportunity present itself. One defender steps to him. Two Kentucky players are guarded by one in the lane here. And DJ Wagner floats back out to the opposite corner. Shepard reads it, kicks it to him. Wide open corner three in transition. Again, just great processing all around. Here, just quick hands yet again on ball. Just thank you. Let me take that. Elliot Cadeau is a really good ball handler, really good point guard down the road, and Shepard makes him look like a JUCO walk-on. Incredibly quick hands, takes it way too easily, and as he kind of approaches the three-point line in transition, Cadeau sagged way off of him. No one else has really entered the scene yet, so he has space. He's a lethal shooter. Shepard just rises up, steps into a wide-open three, just easy points. And then last one here, just a little bit of his on-ball creation. Simple. It's really just simple, fundamental stuff. I know I sound like a broken record here, but this isn't shocking and one mixtape type creation that we fall in love with. It's just a little shot fake, gets the defender up out of his stance, jab step, rip through drive, gets him on his hip, lowers the shoulder, shrugs him off, finishes through the contact. Awesome stuff. The last guy who's kind of blending this production with potential, Jacoby Walter. He's cooled off a little bit from his scorching start to the season, but really he's still performing at an incredibly high level. Before I get into the numbers, I will say biggest red flag with him is his on-ball defense. It has been atrocious recently. I hate it. It's so bad. His foot speed, his reactions, his anticipation, especially in the pick and roll, it's been really, really bad and something that really has to be accounted for and improved on going forward. But the team defense has been excellent. His ability to kind of tag and recover and kind of do similar stuff to jumping passing lanes like we saw with Shepard, it's not quite at that level, obviously, but there are signs of it. And the fact that he's someone in our Discord, our No Ceilings Plus Discord chat described it as good brain, bad feet. And it's kind of hard to agree with or to disagree with that because that's kind of what his defense has been to this point. But with Walter, the big selling point with him is the shooting right now. Currently 55.9 effective field goal rate. The assist rate at the start of the year was awful. That's built up to 9.4. Not a shocking playmaker or anything like that, but being a lot better at making simple reads and making the extra pass and finding the open guy. And with a guy like Walter, who's more of just a pure shooting guard, that's enough. So the fact that he's up at more in like the average kind of territory with his assist rate, really encouraging. Would like to see that get over 10 come end of year, but strides are definitely going in the right direction. And to kind of further complement his passing accuracy and decision-making is that his turnover rate is only 9.8. So again, would like to see the assist rate get higher than that, see that balance out a little more, but he's taking really good care of the ball, and he has a steal rate of 2.8, getting to the line, he has a 43.2 free throw rate. So, and is attempting 11 3-point attempts per 100 possessions while shooting 43.3% from three. So the scoring versatility is there. The scoring efficiency is there. High volume from three. He's attacking the rim and getting to the line and getting rewarded for that aggressive scoring mentality. Exactly what you want to see from a freshman shooting guard. Efficiency, volume, versatility. Tough to argue with that. Currently, Walter is one of three freshmen from a true high major conference with a steal rate of 2, shooting 10 3-point attempts per 100 possessions, a free throw rate of at least 40, and a box plus minus of at least 6. The other names on there are Trae Young and Eric Gordon. I think Jacoby correlates a bit more strongly to one of those players than the other. And I'm assuming that you can kind of connect the dots on who that is. And I think Eric Gordon is kind of actually a really interesting comp for Jacoby going forward. And if you can kind of get that type of player in this draft at around the 5-ish pick range, tough to ask for much more. But going back to that kind of query with Trae Young and Eric Gordon, Jacoby has a lower usage and assist rate than both of them, but his effective field goal rate and rebounding rates are both much higher than those two, at least at this point. So a lot of basketball left to be played, but it's really exciting stuff. It's really fun seeing some of these guys like Jacoby Walter and Reed Shepard, who some didn't necessarily expect much from coming into this year, to perform at the levels they are. So that's all I got on the production versus potential. Going to get into the rookie roulette stuff here with Ausar Thompson and James Edwards here in a minute. Starting with Ausar Thompson. So 6'6", 205-pound wing, came out of Overtime Elite with his twin brother, Amen Thompson, who obviously went to the Houston Rockets with the 4th pick. Ausar Thompson was the 5th overall pick by the Pistons. He ended up at number 7 on our final No Ceilings big board. Ausar is currently averaging 9.3 points per game, which ranks 8th among rookies, 7.4 rebounds, which ranks 4th, 2.3 assists, which ranks 10th, 0.9 steals, which ranks 7th, 1.1 blocks, which ranks 5th, shooting splits of 46.1, 15.8, yikes, and 69.5. All while playing 25.7 minutes per game, which ranks 7th among rookies. Ausar ranks in the 15th percentile in points per shot attempt, 7th percentile in turnover rate at 15.3, 78th percentile in assist rate at 12.9, 14th percentile in effective field goal rate at 48%, 36th percentile shooting at the rim at, unfortunately, just 60%. But the defensive stuff and rebounding has been incredibly impressive. 93rd percentile in block rate with a 2.0 mark, steal rate of 1.4, which ranks in the 62nd percentile, 99th percentile in offensive rebounding, 94th percentile in defensive rebounding. His ability to kind of use that off-ball movement and effectiveness to find those open gaps and use that athleticism and his quick hands to be a disruptor has been so impressive. And it's really translated immediately. Unfortunately, fouling a lot, 5.1 foul rate, not ideal. Kind of getting into some of the a little more advanced stat stuff and the on-off discrepancies. The Pistons rating or net rating is 5.7 lower with him on the court rather than off. And the big difference is the offensive struggles. And he's not the sole cause for that, because that team is just bereft of shooting across the board, as we've seen during this losing streak. But, he's not helping that by any means. And that kind of inability to eat up the space that they give him, to find those counters to just jacking up bad shots, he hasn't quite figured that out yet. So when he's on the court, the Pistons offensive rating is 8.1 lower than when he's off. Not great. But conversely, their defensive rating is 2.5 lower with him on than off. So that's really where the impact is coming from. And that's really impressive and really, really rare for a rookie to make that kind of defensive impact from the jump. So those are just kind of the big picture numbers with him that I wanted to run through. And, now let's dive into my interview with James Edwards III from The Athletic. He had some awesome stuff to say, so make sure to hang out and really kind of consume what all of the good info that James had for us. Very excited to bring on this week's guest to help me break down Ausar Thompson's rookie season thus far. He is a senior writer for The Athletic covering the Pistons, and you can find him on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it, at JL Edwards III. He is James Edwards III. James, thank you so much for taking the time. How's it going?
Hey, no problem at all. Thank you for having me, and all is well, man. Can't complain. It hasn't snowed yet in Michigan. It's just been raining a lot. So
yeah, same here.
We've avoided freezing cold weather. Yeah, similar climate. It's been a little weird, but yeah, I don't know. I wish the sun was out a little bit more. It's been a while.
Yeah, that certainly help. I'm sure with the state of basketball going on over in Detroit right now too. But we're not here to talk about the losing streak and all of that kind of stuff. You can find James's incredible coverage over at the Athletic, multiple podcasts. He's doing an awesome job covering that team that honestly doesn't deserve it. So, but we are here to focus instead
Thank you.
on what should be a bright spot for the Pistons this year. Ausar Thompson, the number 5 overall pick coming out of OTE, his twin brother, Amen Thompson, went 4th overall. But before we kind of dive into the nitty gritty of his game and what, he's kind of shown so far this year and hopefully going forward, what has kind of been just your big picture impression of Ausar and what he's meant to this Pistons team so far?
My big picture impression is like if the kid can learn how to shoot, like I see all NBA potential. I see a guy who can defend 1 through 4. I see a guy who is super active. I see a guy who's just kind of is a step ahead defensively, which is somewhat rare for a young player. Like I think if the shot comes, like he's going to be a very, very, very good player for a long time. And in terms of the losing streak, I mean, he's had a tough go like everybody else. He started off the season really, really well. As the season went on, he struggled with fouls. The book was kind of out on him. They were letting him shoot. He didn't really eat up the space that they were giving him like he did those first couple games where teams were sagging off him. He would attack. It feels like he's gotten away from that a little bit more. But again, a lot of guys are out of sorts right now as the team loses so many games. But yeah, I think he's going to be good. Just aside from like his physical and the high IQ he plays with, the kid works. Like he's always like he's watching the game by the time we get in the locker room, home and road. Like he's on his phone rewatching like the game already. He's a different type of kid, and you like to hitch your wagon to horses like that.
Going into draft night, is it kind of your understanding or assumption that assuming the top 4 picks went the way they did, that 5th pick was always going to be Ausar, or was there some kind of backing to some of the speculation that guys like Jarris Walker or Taylor Hendricks or Cam Whitmore were considered at that spot as well?
I mean, to my knowledge, if the Pistons picked 4th, the pick still would have been Ausar. So
Okay.
I'm fair. Yeah, I believe he was no doubt the pick at 5. And would have been the pick of Pistons and the Rockets flipped spots too.
Okay, awesome. So just with their lineups, and you mentioned the lack of shooting or the shooting struggles, which was kind of one of the red flags coming in. How has he kind of fit in overall to this roster and what the coaching staff is asking him to do, what the player, what the rest of the roster is expecting from him? And he's part of their 4 most used lineups. So there's clearly a sense of trust, even though some of his minutes recently are trending downwards. But I think that's more so hopefully illness related and not necessarily performance. But just how does he kind of fit into this roster and this culture that they're trying to build?
I think culture-wise, he fits in perfectly. A defensive-minded wing who likes to get out and play with pace, who has secondary, tertiary ball handling upside, has high IQ, just needs a little bit more seasoning. And like I said, I think one thing he's really struggled with this year as it's played out. He early on, and this has been an issue for most of the Pistons. They started the year really well. Like teams felt them. They were physical.
Mm-hmm.
The way they played defense was like in your face. They were moving like active hands. It was really pretty defense, like pretty good, damn good defense for any team. That first 3-4 games or whatever. But now I see like Ausar has struggled with once he started to struggle with foul trouble, he's lost a little bit of that aggressiveness. He's trying to find the balance between not fouling but still being who he is and who the team needs to be on that end of the floor. I think he's struggled a bit trying to find that, but I think he'll get there. Obviously, it just takes time and experience. But culture-wise, I think he fits in well. Now with his current roster, it's a little bit tough for him because they transitioned away from emphasizing defense to emphasizing spacing. Obviously, that is not his strong suit in terms of shooting the floor, but he has the ability to cut when guys play off of him. Um, there's been very minute instances of him being used as a short roller. I'd like to see them use that more. I think they really use that to get him out on the floor. But yeah, I don't. This roster needs a few for him to like be able to be part of the. It makes sense when he's next to Cade and Ivy and Bogey. Like that needs to. There's a few more tweaks that need to happen there. I think they need Ivy to be a more consistent 3-point shooter. For that to really work, but it's certainly like I don't think it's that far off from finding a way. I think in terms of like I said, secondary and tertiary ball handling or decision making or playmaking, he's got real chops there. He just needs to clean up his handle a bit. I think that's one thing I've noticed too is when he gets down low and he's trying to dribble into a crowd or dribble his way out of a crowd, his handle's not as tight as it needs to be right now. But you obviously can see the skill is there. It's just a matter of learning what type of guys you can challenge and when not to challenge a crowd.
Yeah, and you talk to, the ball skills and the passing ability, and he's in the 78th percentile in assist rate at 12.9%, which is really impressive, especially for a rookie, and especially for a rookie who's not shooting the way he is. And one of the comps that we used a lot going into the draft was Andre Iguodala, and obviously that's lofty praise and put some high expectations on it. But you kind of mentioned using him as a roller and kind of be try and put him in position getting downhill and maybe create out of that short roll. We saw the Warriors kind of do a lot of that similar stuff with Iguodala and Draymond. And, obviously those are two of the smartest players to ever play the game. So not necessarily saying, they'll get to that level, but is that kind of the role that you would, that you're hoping we kind of see a little more from him going forward?
Yeah, I think like I agree that like the best case scenario is like Andre Iguodala, right? Right. I don't know if that's the best case scenario. That's a damn good
Yeah.
scenario. But okay, obviously, yeah, Iguodala would be a great outcome. But one guy that I think his style, not necessarily the same archetype of player, but not far off in style of play and kind of balancing the strengths and weaknesses is Bruce Brown in Brooklyn. The way they used him as a small ball five, using him as a roller, getting him down the middle of the floor, allowing him to kick out the corners. Like I want to see that with Ausar utilized more until the shot comes around. And now Bruce has turned into a pretty solid standstill shooter. But he was able to be effective by doing that until that by being utilized as a roller and utilizing his passing skills.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, and we've seen how effective he's been from his time in Brooklyn to Denver, and now obviously Indiana.
Mhm.
Just coming into the season, what has kind of surprised you about Asar, and then what has on the flip side of that, what have been some of the kind of major kind of frustrations or disappointments? Let's say aside from the shooting.
The thing that's kind of, I wouldn't say it surprised me, but seeing it every single day in person, just his ability to be like a step ahead of the offensive player more often than not when he's guarding on ball, just watching him, how he moves his feet, how he moves his hips, the activity with the hands, like he's gonna be a tremendous under. Like if he's, I think like you could make the case. I mean, it's kind of fallen off now just because of the fouling and the lack of playing time, but like I have no worry that like we're gonna consider him a top on ball defender like as soon as next year in the NBA. I think what has been a bit disappointing on that end of the floor is his off ball defense. I think he's been in a situation, but basketball career where if he sags off his man a little bit, he can always kind of recover. And he's learned that at this level, even sagging off a little bit is going to be detrimental. And he just gets caught with his hand in the cookie jar while he's playing help defense, or his eyes attached to the ball handler, or even helping digging down to help out a step or two too far because he thinks he can recover, and it ends up costing him. He's got to definitely clean that up. And then the handle. Like I think he's going to be a fine ball handler with time, but it needs to be a little bit tighter. And I think he needs to do a better job of avoiding crowds.
And then I guess just to kind of wrap things up here, what are your kind of expectations for him and how he fits in to this team and the kind of impact that he'll have on this team going forward, not just for this year. I guess first off for the rest of this year for his rookie season, but then kind of going forward into the future as well, and potentially being kind of a core building block for this team.
Yeah, I think it's important for the rest of this season that they prioritize like playing him. They've lost 28 games, and like you said, it's been part of it has been due to an illness, right? Part of it has been due to them needing spacing, but they need to prioritize him and try to maximize him as like a short roller, like we've talked about. He needs to. I think I'd utilize him more as like to take some of the pressure off Cade as a secondary ball handler. Let him get some of those reps. I think you got to think of the big picture with him, and ideally, the best version of him is like a secondary or tertiary ball handler who can get downhill and make those reads. So you want to see more of those as well. And then in the long term, like I think they have high hopes. Like I would say, it's hard to say anybody is untouchable on a team that's lost 28 games, but I think him, Cade, and possibly Duran are like guys that are super untouchable, and I think they throw Ivy in there too. I don't know about untouchable, but like I said, if you are really shake them down to get Cade and Ausar out of that picture. So I think they have I know that they believe so much in him. They know that he has a big hurdle with his jump shot, but that's kind of the thing. It's like he shot well at the end of OTE. I don't think he's a good shooter right now by any stretch. I think part of it could help be the mechanics of it. His guide hand is like on top of the ball. There's just some tweaks that they need to make, but he showed that he could hit shots at that range. He's just, I think part of it, which has a lot to do with where the team is. Like, I think a lot of it's psychological. Like some of the misses are wide open and really bad. And I watch him put in work every single day on his shot. Like it has a lot of work, a lot of room to grow. It has a long journey ahead, but it's not, I think the psychological aspect of missing a couple, being left wide open, plus the losing streak has played into the very bad misses on a lot of these wide open attempts.
For sure. James, this is awesome. Thank you so much for the time. Please
No
plug
problem.
away, tell people where they can find you, how they can support you in all facets.
I appreciate you having me, man. Big fan of your guys' work over there. And on Twitter at JL Edwards III. On the Athletic, you can go to the Pistons tab, NBA tab. You can find me there. I have a podcast, the Detroit Players Podcast, on Patreon with Vincent Goodwill, who's NBA columnist for Yahoo Sports. We do our regular podcast every Monday, and then we drop like a bonus episode every Friday, which is usually like post-game audio or audio from a one-on-one that I've had recently or in the past, just something that I think helps fans get a little pull behind the curtain and see what a day in the life is like too. So check those out.
James is the best. He's doing incredible work. Go support him. James, thank you again. And take care. We'll talk soon.
Appreciate it. Happy New Year.
You too. All right. Can't thank James Edwards enough. Please go support him in all his endeavors. Incredible work on a really bad team right now. But hopefully Ausar Thompson is going to be one of the kind of shining lights and bright spots, slivers of hope for that team going forward. But we kind of heard what Ausar's done this year. We ran through the numbers. We know, we're familiar with the OTE film. But what does that mean for this upcoming draft? What can we learn from Ausar Thompson's rookie season so far and going forward? So I think I don't think it's fair necessarily to obviously do a 1-for-1 comp with Ausar, given the athletic aptitude and how incredibly hardworking he is, how incredibly cerebral he is. I think his combination of athletic tools with cerebral ones is really, really rare. And I'm not sure that there are necessarily any players in this class that directly reflect that. But there are a couple that might get there. I think the first one that's really easy to look at is Ryan Dunn. His defense has been otherworldly this year. We've talked about him a bunch this season. The defensive playmaking, the rebounding, the athleticism, the strength. I think it's the closest thing that kind of mirrors Ausar Thompson from last year into this year's draft. We saw Ausar go where he did go fifth in what was deemed a much stronger draft. So could Ryan Dunn go that high? Could he go higher? The defense is maintained and it's been incredible, but the shot and the offense just isn't there. He's been a really good cutter. We've seen some slashing stuff from him, but the shot, it's not there. There isn't the volume, there isn't the efficiency. Maybe it takes a turn, but in a draft where there are so many question marks and so many uncertainties, if Ausar Thompson can go fifth, and that the incredible draft that we had last year, could Ryan Dunn kind of mirror that as well? I think a couple other names to kind of keep an eye on are, this one's a little more loosey goosey, but Zachary Risachet. I don't think the defense is quite there. I think it's a tier below, but I think the shot is 4 or 5 tiers above where Ausar's is. Risachet has been incredibly impressive, and I think someone who could really be in the argument for that top overall pick. And then just a little further down a little further down most people's big boards, I think we have to talk about Otega Owe, where he's been really good in transition, really good slasher, really good at rim finisher, and the defense has been really impressive as well. But again, the shot's just not there. The percentages are absurd, but he's taken like 9 attempts all year. So those attempts need to quadruple with similar efficiency before I even start entertaining that as a real strength of his, because kind of like we saw in that clip earlier of Castle, where he's just passing up a wide open three. Owe does that a lot, but he's been much more effective getting downhill, incredible in transition, and the defense and the athletic tools and the strength is also there. So I think those are kind of 3 names, with Ryan Dunn being the kind of clearest option of who we can kind of take some lessons from Ausar Thompson and carry that over into this year's draft. Just going to get to a couple comments here and questions. Shout out Runner Dude. Think he can defend forwards full time. I'm assuming this is about Ausar. I do. I think he's athletic enough. I think he's smart enough. I think his hands are quick enough where he's going to be able to scale up in time, especially a couple years from now when he really fills out his frame and has the strength of, a guy in his mid-20s, plus that explosiveness, plus that experience, and how much more the game is going to slow down for him. I think defending forwards is going to be really, really easy for him. I also think he's pretty easily a true 6'6". I don't think that's really inflated, maybe by an inch, but I think 6'6" is pretty fitting. Then Cosmo, I have more confidence in Ron Holland developing an effective jumper than I do for either Thompson twin. I would 100% agree on that. I think Holland is going to be a much better shooter and is already a much better shooter than either Thompson twin is. And I'm assuming that Holland will probably be a common comp for, or the Thompson twins will, or could be a common comp for Ron Holland. I don't see that though. I think Holland's a much better shooter, but I think the defensive consistency and versatility and discipline for both the Thompsons is significantly higher. I think their processing speed, their handle, their passing, their playmaking, and their overall just kind of feel for the game is leagues ahead of where Holland's is right now. So yeah, that's Ausar Thompson. He's been really, really fun. Hopefully that Pistons team can kind of get some shooting to round out their roster a little more effectively. Go support James Edwards the third. Again, at JL Edwards III does incredible work. But let's figure out who we're talking about next week for the rookie roulette. Let me just kind of pull up the window here. All right, let's take a spin. There we go. Just electric content right now. And who do we got? Almost Chet Holmgren. All right. Jordan Hawkins next week. A bit of a roller coaster for him this year, but turns out he's a damn good shooter. So Jordan Hawkins will be next week. Rucker may or may not be back next week as well, but once again, I'm Tyler Metcalf. You can follow me on Twitter at tmetcalf11. You can find all of my written work at NoCeilingsNBA.com, No Ceilings NBA across all socials. Thank you for everyone tuning in, watching along live. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend and a very happy new year. Until next time, see ya.